Sean, would you like to do the pledge?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Davis, would you mind doing the invocation? Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for this glorious evening. Father, we just pray that you just guide us in the way that we need to go to see what's best in the budget for the county and for each individual. Let us work together as a team. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
And so we have two separate meeting minutes that we need to approve that we can look at separately and approve individually. The first set of meetings is from August 20th. I believe everyone has an electronic copy, but I also believe everyone has a hard copy. So if you want to take a moment or two to review these, or review the August 20th rather first. Does anyone have any questions about the meeting minutes from 8/20 or any amendments or changes? Someone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll end up recusing.
I so move.
I'll second.
Everyone who wishes to approve? Aye. Opposed? And so approved.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse due to I was in a medical outpatient procedure the day of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll abstain.
Recuse.
Okay.
And on to the October 15th, 2018 meeting minutes. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or change to the October 15th meeting minutes?
I have an amendment if anyone don't mind sharing it now, or if I don't know if you want to make a motion and get a second and then go into discussion. But
You can share
okay.
it now.
At the part under your new business, the second paragraph where it talks about Ms. Dennis and Mr. Phelps meeting with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Cole. And then it goes on to say about the FY 17, 18, and 19 was erroneously used. I would like to have that changed. There's a couple of this is a two-parter. The first part is that minutes need to be stated as is, whether we enjoy them or not. So we need to put exactly what was said. So saying that they were erroneously used is like giving an opinion that wasn't given that night. The reason we're using erroneously is because I made comments that night that I thought we might be on the wrong fiscal year. Those comments are omitted. I don't see anything about my comments. So that paragraph, I don't think, tells a complete story. It tells a story. I'm not saying that, just maybe if we could change the wording in that to make the minutes accurate as to the conversation of exactly what was said, and then my comments will then disclose it was erroneous without saying it was erroneous. It will just tell the whole story and how it was said that evening.
So what I'm hearing is that you would like to change that, that section to say that that Catherine and Mr. Phelps had met with the county administration and presented data, or presented their findings, and that it was mentioned by Ms. Blaylock that the information that they presented was from fiscal years 17, 18, and not 19.
Well, actually, I don't take the notes in the minutes, so I'm not sure how it should read.
Well,
Minutes are exactly what we said, so I can't tell you how it should be written. I do know that's not how it went down.
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of going off of my memory.
Because technically, I'm not looking at, I didn't take notes, but if anyone here can remember, I commented, I think those were from a different year. I didn't ever say 17 to 18, because technically, when I did my homework on it, they would be from 16, 17, and then I broke down, if anybody wanted to know this later in the meeting today, into detail, just so I knew tonight what exactly the county administrator's budget was, down to the penny with the percentages. Now, I don't know how it should be written, because I don't remember it word for word. I can remember my comments roughly. I can remember saying, I think those are the wrong numbers because my numbers show, I know I said 6.1% because I had those numbers in front of me. And I know that came up, and that's not in the minutes. I also, that one sentence about was erroneously used, just in my opinion, I don't think that's minutes. Minutes are going to be what happened in a meeting. And I think if someone was reading this, because the whole point to have the minutes is someone reads a meeting and understands the comments, that, I don't think that shares what really happened in that conversation is what I'm saying. There's more of us here. I'd love to hear some feedback on my comments, because I could be seeing it wrong or a different way.
Okay. Would anyone else like to provide some input?
I mean, I wasn't here, but my thing is, we have a transcript. This is, you talking about the meeting that was in here, right? You got that, right? So why don't we just, don't vote on this right now, go back, look at the transcript, and just correct that paragraph, and then submit it at the next meeting. And that way we have exactly what was said. We don't have to try to guess and fix it right now. That's the best way, just.
Minutes aren't meant to be transcripts. They're meant to be summaries. A motion was made, da-da-da. I believe that I did say in the meeting, I could be wrong, but you were right, Mrs. Blaylock. We did, when I presented the numbers, you did bring it up that you had a different set of numbers, and Mr. Phelps then checked online, and they were. And I mean, they were erroneously used. So I think I said that in the meeting, but I could be mistaken. But I can send you the data file on the minutes, and then if you want to watch it and add more to it or change it, that works for me.
Well, I agree
Well, you already
it's
have
a
the data
summary.
file.
It's not verbatim. I agree. It's not it's a
Right.
summary. But I know my comments aren't in here, and they don't have to be all in there, but to sort of show why it played out that way. Because let's say we leave the word erroneously. I'm fine with that. I'm not that picky. But if we leave it, let's tell why it was erroneous, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I picked up the wrong budget book. As a matter of fact, I
Okay.
made sure today, and Mary, I will recycle what's in the past budget books, because I have them till 2006, and return the binders so you all can reuse them.
So, would someone like to make a motion to table these minutes until,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Move to-
And I'll recuse myself since I wasn't at that meeting.
The same with me.
Same
I
with
re-
you, Sean? Okay.
Yes.
No, and so thank you both for that clarification, and you as well, Sean, for mentioning the transcript. So I think that just solves that right there.
Sean, also, in that paragraph, you said 2D, you meant second, 2ND. Second year.
Well, I think that is semantics at this point. I want to make sure that we have the bigger context of the meeting minutes,
Right.
clarified. So we can,
Just, okay,
yes, let's just make sure we have the
the other thing.
yeah, the bigger
Okay.
point clarified.
Okay, so you're not recused on that.
No.
It was just that first one.
I don't write real fast.
So moving forward, I believe everyone has a hard copy, and Mary has sent out the electronic version as well. I think I had forwarded that to everyone several weeks ago regarding the memo from the Planning Commission. When you had presented, Dawn, there were some
Yes.
questions regarding the training. The training on a new software system. And let me find that. So, does anyone have any questions? I have one question regarding this, but I wanted to open it up regarding the memo that was sent out and from Ms. Parrish. Does anyone have any questions regarding the training going forward? If we need a few minutes to review that and look over it, that's fine as well. Do you have one, Catherine?
You already sent this out. I had already reviewed it.
Did you have any questions?
I have no questions.
And you said planning commission, you meant the planning.
Planning department. Thank you. Any questions or? So, Mary, I do have one. And it's just regarding the time frame of when the training will take place. Is that, because in the last paragraph, it talks about departments noted above will be in the $10,000 range. If departments cannot find the funding within our already approved budgets for this training, we'll request approval of additional fundings to address this need. Have they made any progress, or the department made any progress as
I
to?
haven't followed up to see, but I can find out where they're at on the training. When I talked to IT after Wanda actually developed this, I think they were going to do it sooner than later.
Okay,
There are some, Bluebeam is basically a version, if you ever used Adobe, where you
Yes.
can, it's Adobe, it's like an Adobe type of thing that does special things with maps. There were a handful of people in the organization that know how to use it, and so they were like, just bring it on early, we'll train everybody, we'll be able to do it. But as she stated in the memo, it didn't work out so well that way. And just like anybody else who's ever been trained on software, we all have our own little way of doing things. And they're all right, but they're just, I think Wanda was looking for some consistency in her division. So, but I will ask Wanda and Jane if they have actually scheduled that training, and I'll get back with you and let you know.
Yeah, and/or if they maybe have identified the funding for that.
I believe they may have, and I think of why I would, I believe IT has identified it, but I will confirm that too.
Okay,
Schedule and identify, yes.
thank you. So, moving forward with because of the information from the last presentation, Catherine, decided to put the updated budget from the county administration on the agenda so that you can kind of speak to that. So, going to give the floor is yours. You and Scott as well. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I have copies of that, and I'll send them down. I'll let Scott speak first, since I talk about those, and then I'll talk about the car. Oh, the car? Okay.
I'm sorry.
What page is that? Oh, well, I'm gonna bring that up last. Let's see, do we have the flow chart too? Yeah, I'm gonna set the flow chart down too. FY19.
Yeah, I knew.
So we went back and looked through the figures again and reviewed the FY 17 to 18, that's the FY 18 budget, and the FY 19 budget. And we'd like to clarify the increases in the budget for each of these 2 years, since we had made that error and we're looking at the FY 17 budget. So if you go from FY 17 to FY 18, there's actually a 33% increase in the budget, and that is due to a transfer from the utilities fund to the general fund. There was a deputy county administrator position fulfilled, thus the reason why there was such a large increase from FY 17 to FY 18. And it's stated on page 264. All the departments actually state notable differences year over year. So that's a 33% increase. Somebody could go back and check my math. I did throw it in Excel to make sure I was doing it correctly, and that's what I came up with. So I'm not sure where the 6.1% came from. I did try to do amended to actuals and amended to proposed budgets, and I could not come up with that figure. However, I moved on to FY19 to figure out the percentages there, and that is a 4.49% increase from FY18 to FY19's recommended budget. There's no way to actually compare actuals until to the end of the fiscal year, so that figure will not be in the budget plan until the next year. So looking at the actuals, comparing them to the amended year over year, we could safely say that the 33%, the 4.49% increase will possibly decrease based on the trends that we've seen You could go all the way back to FY15 and see that the actuals are always lower than the amended numbers. The increase for this year is due to the fact that they only had one vehicle available and it was in need of repair.
It couldn't be repaired. It had reached the end of its useful life, so it's a replacement vehicle.
The increase was due to a replacement vehicle.
In addition to year 2 of the Evergreen study, and then the COLA of, I believe, 2.1 for county employees. It was two. Right, but I think the COLA that everyone got was 2.1, is that correct? So that's what, yeah, it was a replacement vehicle.
That is all I have. Are there any questions?
Was the replacement vehicle solely for the county administration, or was that part of?
The replacement vehicle, and I think it was somewhere around between 22,000, was for Mark Taylor. One of the efficiencies that we found is that they do use a pool vehicle between the treasurer, I think they said. There's a pool vehicle here in the building. So Mr. Petrovich does use a vehicle from utilities. He is the supervisor of utilities. But they do use pool vehicles. I found that to be an efficiency.
Okay.
I did have a question for Mary. When do the actuals typically come in to where we could look at them?
Final actuals for fiscal year 18, they'll be presented with the CAFR. We're still actually finalizing those numbers now. It's typically the end of November. It may be a little bit later, the actual CAFR presentation this year. But they're truly working on it as we speak. So, and they will be part of the FY20 budget when it comes out. Everything just shifts over a year, and you'll have the amended, the actuals, and then the recommended through all the steps. So we could run, if you're looking for some preliminary numbers, we can run numbers now from the system, but they're not audited and complete until those.
I don't think that's necessary. I also did the comparative study, and at the last meeting, I believe that we agreed that Stafford County was probably the closest. Their budget for their county administration was $1,337,394. So, over $200,000 more than we had. But they only have 2 deputy county administrators. As you know from our presentation, there is an FTE unfunded and not filled, still sitting there in the county administration as far as bringing in a 3rd county administrator. So do you have any other questions?
I'm going to open it up to the rest of the committee if they have questions.
Yeah, before we do, can I clear up the 6.1? I'm dead on with Mr. Phelps. I too have the 33% exactly. The reason you're getting the different number is I did adopted to adopted. You did adopted to amended. And so that's the difference in your number of the 4 points. So you're right, but that's where the 6.1 was coming from, because you're right. We will not get the actuals for a while, which I knew, and I'm sure you did too. So those numbers are correct. And what I had come up with the same thing. The only reason, I'm not saying that this is a large budget. I'm not saying it's not warranted and justified completely. It's just as they look at the sheriffs and the schools and everybody else, I want to make sure our numbers are dead on and accurate. So when Mr. Bell takes them to present, he is working with the right numbers. So I appreciate that. What you said is exactly what I'm looking at, the numbers I came up with, other than I was doing adopted to adopted we won't know the final numbers. As a total increase, and you can tell me if you looked up this, from 2017 to 2019, a total I show of 39% if you accumulate it. Now, you explained why the 33 was 1 year, and then I have the 6.1 so far, which may adjust as new numbers come in. So that's just to clarify why we're hearing those, why I had said 6.1. And I didn't have questions.
You did or you did not?
I did not.
Okay.
I mean, they told us why.
Did you have an opportunity to meet again with the county administration, or?
I talked with Mr. Petrovich because in examining the budget, I thought that the increase I saw where his position had moved from being charged to the utilities to being charged to county administration. So I called to just to verify that. And I also found they're mandated, there's only two things really that they're mandated to do by federal or state mandates. One is FOIA, and the other is record keeping. So some things that they do that are non-mandated, non-mandated by state or federal, is like come up with help the supervisors with a strategic plan. And I know that Mr. Taylor is also the deputy clerk the clerk of the board. He's also the social services board. So there are other things that are there. And I would think any directive by the Board of Supervisors would be considered locally mandated. So I'm not quite sure what, it meant. I have the notes from August 20th where it talked about Mr. Yakubowski's request on tasking and non-tasking. And in the minutes, Greg had said that you would send us a copy of that email. I have not received that email, or that email did not, or I've misplaced it. I've deleted it by mistake. So Mary, you were going to send me that, Mr. Yakubowski's, because I don't think.
I found the email. I sent it to you, Greg, August the 13th. I think you forwarded it, but I can forward it again
Okay.
to everyone. It was after my conversation with Mr. Yakubowski, and that's what we discussed at the meeting, I think, later in August. He was looking at a couple things. What he wanted was consistent reports from every department so that we could have something to document and for future use, both for the citizens and for future CBRC members. So he's looking for some consistency. And the four things that I had on the list was an explanation of the responsibilities of each department, including a departmental organizational chart and an explanation of who employees report to, the number of staff within the department that are necessary because of mandates. And I do believe, Catherine, he is talking about state and federal mandates. I mean, I think they're trying to get at what are we mandated to do from something above us. And then beyond that, yes, anything that the board directs Mr. Taylor to do, he has to do, but it's not a state or federal mandate. So that is my interpretation. I believe he's looking for state and federal. And then he wanted a review of other non-mandated staff and non-mandated expenditures, including any suggested revisions to programs or processes that would create efficiencies in the department without negatively impacting services. And then the peer review piece comes in. He wanted to know, if you look at other localities, how many staff and how much funding is provided to similar departments. And this is, I happen to know a little bit about Stafford. I don't know that we are apples to apples in the county admin division for Stafford because, and this is you're gonna find this across the board. Nobody's right or wrong, but everybody chooses to do different things different ways. And I believe Stafford has at least a portion of their staff in the county admin that are working on like regional agencies and type of stuff that we may have over in social services or in other departments. So just be careful when you're looking at just numbers for staff because they are not always apples to apples. So that's one thing. Secondly, the other thing I'll tell you too, every number you've talked about is fine. I mean, they're here, you can multiply them and add them and subtract them, and they're not factual numbers, but adopted is different than amended. And so if you're going to compare from one year to the next, I would always compare adopted to adopted, amended to amended. Amended typically for us are grants, things that happened after the year. We don't do much amending. We try to avoid it as much as possible. We do some amending within department budgets. I told you departments are responsible for finding money when they need it first, but a lot of what we do is grant funding, new money. And so if you look at an adopted budget, and then you'll see millions of dollars added on an amended because of grants. Typically, we get some of the same grants from year to year, so amended to amended might be a better look, but an adopted to amended could be a total picture that just doesn't make sense. So I would suggest if you're going to pick one, and we talk about this all the time. Years ago, we used to do amended to amended, then we went back to adopted, because the adopted is where the board made their original decisions. Here's the tax rate, here's what we plan to do. And then after that, things happened in the year, like additional grant money and that type of stuff. So I would just tell you that I think probably comparing the same thing across is a better approach to it, so.
That's why in comparing the two departments, I felt like the only thing that we could compare would be the number of deputy county administrators. Because, as you said, they have, like our PIO and our community outreach is charged to Mr. Taylor. That's a totally different department in
Exactly.
Stafford. So,
So you have to be careful. You have
Right.
to understand what programs each department is running.
Right.
Because it's totally up to the locality to decide where they're going to
Right.
put some of these positions.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with the decisions that any locality makes, but we do make different decisions. And so if
Right.
you just look at a number and don't think about what that department's doing, and in this case, I think Stafford's higher because of that. The next one may be the opposite way. So I just warn you just to make sure that the programs are similar when you're comparing two things.
Sure.
And I did want to clarify, the county administrator did get a new vehicle in 18. They actually requested it in 19, and it was during the 19 budget when it died, the budget preparation, so we did it in 18 because it had to happen, but they aren't in the operational budget. Vehicle replacements are in our capital budget. So, because you'll see in the 19 budget, there's 0 for capital. So because we replaced so many vehicles, they're part of our capital budget. So you're not going to see that in any of these operational numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
Having said that, while you're there, because I did think that was a CIP, but, so what was the increase? Can you give a summary of what that would have been then if it wasn't a car?
There was no capital increase. There was some, from 18 to 19, no, it was 0 in capital for both years. The minimal increase on the operational side, and it looks like they had some increases in telephone services, books, and subscriptions. And then the rest of it would be personnel, which would typically be the COLAs, the merits, the comp studies. When we have a position like we had Mr. Petrovich, who was in utilities and then came over there, when they're doing dual jobs like that, sometimes we allocate their work based on what they're doing, because utilities is a enterprise fund that has to be separated. Taxpayers do not pay for the utility stuff. It's utility users. People who have a water bill pay that bill, not every taxpayer. And many taxpayers do not have water sewer. So it's important that we separate those out and that we have rates assigned for the usage of water sewer that fund that program. So when we have a person like Mr. Petrovich who is doing this and doing that, we allocate his time between the two. He could have, in some cases, he could have had a year where he did 50% one, 50 the other, and the next year could have been 90-10, depending on the projects and what he was working on. So those things do affect personnel.
well, the increase was only $2,000. And I do remember that Mr. Cole talked about getting he had to replace his printer.
Yeah, the
So-
increase in operations was minimal. A printer
Minimal.
replacement would be capital, it wouldn't be in
Right,
operation,
right.
so, and they say here, telephone services, books and subscriptions, those things, yeah. They have a little over $1 million budget in 19, and only 45,000 of it is operations. The rest of it is salaries. That's basically what county admin does, so,
Okay, are there any other questions for us?
Just, Mary, you said the first thing, Yakubowski, was an explanation of what the department.
An explanation of the responsibilities of each department, including a departmental organizational chart and an explanation of who employees report to.
Are there any other questions? And speaking of that, I know that that's the standardized form and the process and how we're, as a committee, putting that together has been somewhat delayed. I know we all have full-time jobs.
Well, I think, we looked at it and Dawn was gonna do so I believe we're ready to write our report as soon as we get the form.
Well, I had sent out an email asking for what people wanted on it, and nobody replied to me. So
I don't think I received
without-
that one either.
Without the input, there's not much I can do until I get that information.
Can you resend that? Because I did have to replace both of my devices in the last 60 days, so thank you.
And so, Dawn, open to are you still open to hitting that up?
Yep.
Okay.
Clarify, what do you need from us on that? Just this is about your report from the Planning Commission?
No.
Oh, I thought, what do you need from? Oh, okay.
I don't think you were here the first time we discussed it.
Yeah.
So we're looking to do like a Google form that we could fill in, answering Mr. Yakubowski's questions.
That was the meeting, I was in the hospital.
Yes.
Yeah, you can just resend that to me too, thank you.
Yeah.
Couldn't we just put the information that Mary just mentioned in the Google form, because those are the questions that need to be answered? That would become the standard template, then we look at that, and whatever we need to add or tweak to that, and then we will have our standard form.
That'd be great.
Yeah, however, whatever works easiest for you. Are there any more questions regarding budget, county administration, under new business? I do have one question. Looking at the meeting minutes from August, there was a discussion about an MOU between the county and Parks and Rec. And I don't know, Mary, have you heard any more about that? I know initially the county and Parks and Rec were in the, it might have been the school system, rather. They were in the school system. We're in the beginning stages of creating that MOU, and I know they weren't at that time wanting to kind of give any information out because they were still formalizing it, but it's been several months.
There's a lot of things that are being done in practice. They are working to formalize, and we haven't met now, but it was more of a overall MOU for all of the different departments that may have an issue, or we have some things with the finance department on the school side, that type of stuff. So specific to Parks and Rec, I don't have a status on that. I do know that project is still in the works.
Okay.
So not consolidation, but I'm trying to think of the term, The collaboration, thank you. I could not get my words to come out. Collaboration, thank you.
Okay.
I know when we met with them, it had just been produced, and it was in its infancy stages of reviewing. It had been developed. So I would say at this point, it's probably been signed and in stone. Maybe we just follow up.
Follow up. Okay.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Do you want to?
That I haven't talked to Mr. Brooks since, I guess, August, and they said they were progressing then, and we're getting close. It's possible that could be completed now.
Would you be open to following up with
Yeah,
Mr.
we can
Brooks?
follow up, yeah.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Any other items that the committee would like to talk about or discuss? I do have one, just for transparency purposes. The beginning of December 5th and 6th, I was actually invited to attend a national conference on the Council of State Governments that I'll be going to in Kentucky. And they really work with governments from throughout the state governments throughout the country to kind of shape public policy. And I'm saying that because there are two sessions. One I would really like to, one is with DOL, Department of Labor, but there's another one that is going to be talking about the opioid crisis an epidemic. And, that's information that I know eventually maybe will trickle back down to the local level and could have impacts from the human services and public safety standpoint. And I know, Catherine, that was something that you had spoke about several months ago. So I don't know. I know that's a big one. That's something that everyone's going to be trying to go to. But I will try to gather some information from that. And if it's anything that I feel, should be disseminated, I'll go ahead and try to give that information back to the county leadership. Council on State Governments. Is there any other? Catherine, I believe you had a.
No, I just, is there anything else that the committee would like us to look into as far, or to ask the county administration about? Or are you satisfied that we're probably ready to write the report to the supervisors pending receipt of the email, the form?
I'll open it up to others first.
So it seems like there's three that possibly we could write: the planning department, Parks and Rec, and county administration.
At this point, I'm open to moving forward with just writing them and producing a product. So
Okay.
I don't know how others feel.
Can you
And I
clarify,
just-
do we have a deadline that you've got to do this? I'm sorry.
I don't think we do, but traditionally for the people that are new on the board, we do have to, we will be moving into reviewing the two proposed budgets, the one for the county and the one for the schools. And that hits us 2 weeks before, maybe we'd get 3 weeks, but I know it's a lot earlier this year. And we don't have a lot of time to review them, so if we could maybe get those done before we're into FY '20 proposed budgets. And then we have to meet, we have to present, our chair has to present the meeting after we get those budget books. So we'll probably have multiple meetings, not once a month. Traditionally, we've had multiple meetings to help the chair produce the presentation. So I don't think we have a deadline. I don't know. I didn't receive the email about Mr. Yakubowski. But I would think that we would want to just get those behind us.
Yeah, so I mean, I think at this point, the sooner the better, that we can develop those. I know we're getting into the holiday stretch, and so time flies and people get busy with other things. But if we could have the reports prior to the end of 2018, I think that would be great. So if we can shoot for that, and I think with the email and the information, having the form, that is really doable.
Was it ever expressed on what percentage of departments that we should have reviewed in a fiscal year?
I'd say that again.
How many departments that we would be expected to review in a fiscal year?
I don't know if we've ever had a conversation about a specific number of departments. I think it's more so about where we initially hadn't really focused our attention on, and putting our, having some conversations and having some attention on those departments. And then I know with the, as the new budget comes out, that may end up taking up more time. So
To answer your question also, we didn't have, before we were trying to look at the whole budget, and we're finding that's impossible. I mean, you have full-time staff that invest months to build it. So us as a volunteer board don't have the time to go through it. So at that point, that had led us into ourselves parsing out the budget by department, and each year, I believe it was, looking at one or two departments at a time. So over the span of several years, we will have looked through every part of the budget, is how I recall it, so.
And I can potentially foresee with the new standardized report going back and even if we've looked at other departments, going back and having a second look so that we can have that information in a standardized format for the other departments that we may have already looked at in previous years, but without having any standardized information to kind of have that for future committee members. So I can see that being the direction that we go moving forward. Yes, ma'am.
Just a question. I've watched the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I'm aware of Mr. Yakubowski's comments. Is there an email I'm missing that where is that email, and can we all get a copy?
Yes, that's the email.
That's the email that
That's
you were
the-
going to send.
yes.
Yeah, it would be great if we could all get on the same page
Yes.
with that. Okay, thank you.
One thing that does change, now I'm looking at the printed copy, which I believe the page numbers are off from the online copies. But when we, well, that isn't even the right, the agencies, outside agencies that ask us for funding. So right now, the Social Services Advisory Board are reviewing those requests. An example would be United Way, MICA, and Powerhouse. Those would be the outside agencies that Spotsylvania typically funds. So it would only be those that deal with social services that we do. I know that there was the $50,000 to the airport last year. I guess that came from the Board of Supervisors. I don't know if Mary can tell us that, but on those pages, and Mary, what page is that?
And the larger version of the budget, it's on page 271 for 19. It's called Citizen Services Regional Agencies. Internally, what we do is we assign, when a regional agency comes to us and wants funding, we assign that request to the relative department. The bulk of these are social services types of programs, so they review the bulk of them. But there are, I think there's one or two that Jay's staff is involved in. Something like the airport museum probably would have went through the board and county admin. And each department is asked to look at that request and determine, in their opinion, based on their professional knowledge of the work that they do and how that is relative to them, what they think. This DSS group, who has the most of them, actually use their DSS advisory board to review all of them.
Right.
So I can tell you, I can give you a list of which one of these agencies, which departments they're assigned to.
That would be
So that
great.
when you're working with the department, you can talk about that agency. The bulk of them are definitely assigned to social services, but there are a few that aren't. I don't believe Mr. Yakubowski had any deadlines at all. I don't think he did. I think he truly just, the actual bylaws only say that you guys are going to look at the budget every year. And that after you review the county administrator's recommended budget, you're going to come back and present a report of findings. It's a quick turnaround. And you all had been trying to approach that from the aspect of, let's look at the budget throughout the year. Let's talk to the departments and find out what's going on so that we don't have to dig, detail every year. We'll know something about the big part of the budget, and then we can look at those sheets that say what's new in each department, and you can focus on those things. And so you all were really doing that when Mr. Yakubowski came about with this proposal, which is very similar to that, just formalizing what you're doing. And I don't think he had any, I remember talking to him, he's like, you guys are putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, and you're here for the citizens. If you're finding things throughout the year and you want to report that in the citizens, then let's do it. Let's keep the reportings going throughout the year. Let's not just make it a once-a-year report. So that's all he's after, and I'm sure, like anything else, the sooner the better, get them done, get them boxed up. It doesn't mean you won't go back and look at a department again a second year. Things change. But I don't recall any deadlines. The only true deadline is that, and for this year, I can actually give you the dates because they're in the budget calendar for fiscal year 20. Mark will present his budget on the 12th of February. He always does around Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. And then you all are scheduled on the 26th to make your presentation of any information you'd like to provide about the recommended budget. That same 26th meeting is when the school board will actually present their budget to the Board of Supervisors. So that night, the school board will present their budget. You all will provide your feedback on what the county administrator presented. And actually, I think it says, I'm sure it says, that if necessary, the committee may provide a supplementary follow-up presentation. And you're not limited to one presentation. The only thing that we need to remember is that the budget will be adopted in April. So we've got to get all these work sessions done and all this presentation to the board so they can make a decision.
Mary, I thought the school board was going to present the day before Mr. Taylor.
Now they may be presenting their budget. They go through their own process on their side.
Okay,
They do all of
so
this in advance and then come to us.
we're
So
not getting the school's budget until the day we were supposed to present?
You're getting the school board presentation on the 26th, yes. Now, they will have already had their work sessions. You can watch their work sessions. They're all, you'll know what's
The
going on at that
superintendent
time.
will have already, but we will hear it when Dr. Baker will present, which will be sometime in January. I'm sure he's already named that date. Do you have that, Ms. Shelley?
That did change. Now, I watched that last year, and the presentation that was done by the school board, there were figures changed from what the school board adopted budget was and what was presented. We did not get our budget books until after Dr. Baker, the school board presented their budget. So perhaps if we could get a budget book sooner, unless we want to do a second presentation.
They will present on the 26th. You will actually give now, at this point, you will have the county administrator's recommended budget, which will
Right.
have what he is recommending to the board as far as a local transfer to the school.
Okay,
And that is, that really is all the board does, is transfer a local lump sum money to the schools. The schools determine how they're going to spend that. That's their responsibility, and they have a calendar, just like us, of all these dates that they go through. And they're all public, and you can see all that conversation.
Right.
Now, once they present it to us, and the county board makes their decision on how much local funding they're going to give, and then we go back to them, then they have to go through another series of meetings, and they have to finalize their budget. So there
Sure.
are definitely changes throughout the process.
okay, because unless maybe we could get county administration to print us off the school board's recommended budget, because we don't get those budget books. There's that this would be February 11th and February 26th.
I mean, it's all public information. I can certainly ask, but I think we need to understand that you are assigned to review the county's budget, and the county provides a lump sum. The schools, in this case, and I want to be careful how I say this, the school is like another department.
Right, now,
So if you want to review the school budget as a department, then you'll need to contact Ms. Gaines, like you would contact Ms. Parrish.
I believe
Or
it's-
whoever, and you would get all that information.
we're supposed to present, or at least we have, the county and the schools' recommendations, not in a detail, not like when we reviewed the schools.
Right.
But just,
So you can contact them to get that information, absolutely, when they have it
Okay.
available. Now,
Right.
we actually present, and I think the schools actually create too, a pretty extensive recommended document. So this stuff doesn't get turned around overnight. So,
Right.
So honestly, when we are presenting it to the board, that's the first time we're literally hot off the press. I mean, that's how quick. So I can't get you anything in advance of that, but certainly you can get copies when they are available.
okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, or comments? I would just like to say that as a committee, we also have a liaison here from the school that we can, I think, as we get through December and kind of going forward into January and February, that we should probably, as a committee, have more conversations with that liaison so that questions or things that we may have that we can be abreast of, we can know about, we can begin to kind of have a conversation about. So I think probably the smartest thing to do right now is to leverage our relationships that we have, so that we can put together a recommendation based on that and not be scrambling, because, so that would just be what I would have to say about that. So, because we do have those relationships, and, that's what they're there for. And numbers are numbers. They, are what they are. So,
We'll look at both the county administrator's recommended budget and the superintendent's. So,
Yes.
I used them as an example as a department, but under that example, they're a big department. I mean, they have
Yes.
all of these departments that we have under them. So you're going to have to take them off, bite it off in small chunks for them too, just like you do for us. Because you're going to get a budget document as big, if not bigger, than what we put together. It's huge. No, no. But the bylaws actually say that you are to provide a report to the Board of Supervisors regarding the county administrator's recommended budget and the school superintendent's recommended budget.
Right, that's what
Yes.
I said.
And in order for that to, the purpose behind this was to get the citizens' input before the budgets were adopted. So that's why the turnaround is so quick, because once they present in February, it's April they're approving. So there's not but so much time to review. That is a standard practice, that's every
Yes.
year.
Correct. Well, maybe, Ms. Shelley, maybe at our January meeting, you might just give us a brief,
I think, yeah, I think in the past we've still had our meetings. No, we didn't. No, we did not. The county was closed. Did we?
moved them
Did we move
one
them?
day before, later? I think one time we did like a Tuesday
So
or something like that.
we can move it. I mean, that's
we'd have to find out the availability. We really ought to keep it in that week because, she would have school board meetings second Monday. Right.
Dr. Baker will be presenting his budget on the 28th of January. So if you postpone your meeting for a week, that's the same day that we will be getting the superintendent's proposed budget. The following, that week, we have a budget work session. The following week, we have another work session. So we will be very busy prior to us approving our budget on February 11th is when we actually will be, if I'm looking at my calendar correctly. I don't have my glasses, so I apologize. And then I believe then Mr. Taylor presents his budget on the 12th.
12th, and then on the 26th, once they will present a school board
Then-
approved budget, and then the final one is a school board adopted.
Yes,
budget.
so we,
Okay, all the steps?
yes.
So our January meeting, since we cannot have it on, the county's closed, what about the third Tuesday of the month? Is that a problem for this room?
We have to check with county admin.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess, we need to find out if we could keep it within the same week.
So can we do this? Can we? I'd be happy to send out an email getting some dates from everyone on the committee, and if we can potentially coordinate those dates with Ms. Shelley or the liaison from the school to see what works. If we could do that sooner rather than later, in the next week or so, just so that we can kind of have it planned out, I think that'd be best. So, any other points, conversations?
Are we gonna have the update on planning, or was just that? The planning department, the review of the planning department, was it just from Ms. Parrish's memo?
Yes.
Did we have any comparative analysis? None?
No, no, and that's,
Okay. Any analysis of increase or decrease in budget?
They didn't have any decrease. Ms. Wan, they were basically maintaining what they had in the memo, which was pretty neat that it was written, because the training was the concern that we, one of the things we saw that popped up. But if they've already scheduled the training, because when I asked her, could we look forward in the future to help them with that, she said, well, they usually take it out of their training budget anyway, and they had to get it done sooner than later.
so one of the things too, about probably that is beneficial about putting together this standardized report and form is that any gaps that that we may come across from or inconsistencies in reporting from the county administration, planning department, or Parks and Rec, I think we will, because we don't have a deadline, but we want to do it as soon as possible, we can then follow back up. So if, you know, the individuals that reviewed the planning department maybe need to follow up and just do a comparison of Stafford's planning department, then that's something that can be done after the fact, and then we can then include in the, you know, in the report. So I don't think I don't think we're at a point to where we can't go back and add those things in. Scott, you have a sure.
I was just wondering if we had our sights set on additional departments at this point.
Does anyone have any other departments that they would like to review? I would like to get through this, and knowing that we have what we have coming up in January with the dates, it seems as though we'll be putting our efforts and time into the superintendent's and the county's budget. So I think that's where our efforts will likely be for the next couple months. And then after that, I think we can reconvene and then have a conversation about what other departments we may want to look at. Okay, so someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Alex, hang on one second. Did we decide whether we were going to keep the December meeting, or if we were going to? A lot of committees take the December off. Do we want to take that off since we're going to be in multiple meetings?
Yeah.
So I would like to move that we not have a December meeting, and that because we're going to have multiple meetings after the first of the year.
I second.
I'll approve to cancel the December meeting.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes to suspend the December meeting until January. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you.
She spoke up first, Dawn.